Welcome to the sanctuary. I'm Kyle, and I'm here to tell you never be afraid to step into the pleasure den of the absurd. Now, I wanted to tell everybody about a film that you should know about. If for those that do, you know how good it is. For those of you who don't, it's a documentary film about the 1999 tour of the Ozzfest. So let me just give you my backstory first about how I got this movie. And so I was at a movie convention, and this guy was selling bootleg tapes on VHS, and here was this movie, this at the time unreleased, fully completed film by Penelope Spherris. And so I bought it, and it's widescreen and everything. I mean, it's not crystal clear, but it's a good watch. It's not like fuzzy or got the squiggle lines or anything like that. It's just it's just the picture's a little muted, but you can make everything out fine. And so I don't have that tape here in the sanctuary, but I was able to put it on DVD years ago, and I made this little label for it. And so, like I said, the back of the tape on the write-up was saying that the film remains unreleased, and ironically, they stated, whoever wrote these notes said that it was because they didn't secure the rights to the Black Sabbath catalog. So right away, you may be asking, well, what does Sabbath have to do with this documentary? Well, what makes this Ozzfest so special and the documentary so poignant now in 2023 is the fact that this is when Ozzy headlined the Ozzfest. No solo Ozzy. It was him appearing with the original members of Black Sabbath, Bill Ward, Geezer Butler, Tony Iommi, for the first time in a long time, and they're celebrating Black Sabbath's 30-year anniversary. So, this film is great, and I'd say the best part about this film is the editing. I mean, it goes all over the place, but it keeps you interested, and it's just chock full of like every little sort of piece of what was going on during and for this tour. So I actually made notes. I watched it last night, and quite frankly, this film is a jewel in the collection. Excuse me. It's one of the greatest rock and roll documentaries that you're ever going to see. And so as of now in 2023, I don't think that this film has ever seen an official, like Blu-ray or even on any streaming service. And I don't think it's been released at all. Yeah, I guess you might be able to find it on YouTube or, some channel like that. And, I just encourage you to, if you do find it, watch it. You really will enjoy it. I mean, let's just take a look at the notes here and see if I can make some coherent stream of consciousness review for you. So it was filmed in 1999. They do mention Columbine, and that was 99. And so this tour goes throughout the summer, all across the United States. And, so it opens with Ozzy. And this is part of the reason, too, I wanted to do this, is because right now, you know, as I'm sure you're aware, in 2023, Ozzy Osbourne released an official statement saying his touring days are over. He's just not physically able to do it. And, you know, God bless him, you know, he gave us his all, and, you know, he deserves to rest. And he should, you know, and that's kind of what makes this documentary of We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll so poignant then, and even more poignant now, because, you know, they're interviewing the Sabbath members about, you know, they're reflecting on the early years, and, you know, they're talking to Bill Ward. Here's the funny part. They're talking to Bill Ward, and, you know, how old were you when you started Sabbath? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I was probably 18, you know. And they're like, well, how old are you now? And he's like, I'm 51. And, you know, I'm 52 right now. So, and, you know, so, these guys are, you know, reflecting on, you know, the legacy that this great band and very highly influential band, you know, made on these people, because, you know, the film opens with Ozzy, you know, reflecting on it all, and, you know, I can't believe, you know, when I'm looking out on the stage, you know, and saying like, wow, it's been this long, you know, 30 years ago, you know, I first sang this song. And he looks out and he's like, well, the audiences don't seem to be getting any younger. But, excuse me, that's, so they reflect on that. And then they start showing interviews with the crowds, when, you know, the festivals had just started, you know, for the day, and they're all getting inside and everything, and so they get a lot of comments from these people, you know, Ozzy's the best, and this one guy's like, you kept me from blowing my brains out, you know, meet my daughter, you know, and here's this, you know, 8-year-old girl. There's people who are bringing their families, their kids, I mean, young kids, babies, you know, kids that are, you know, like 10 years old, 11, you know, teenagers, and in high school, and all the college kids and everything. And that's really wild. I mean, they show you the mosh pits, and, you know, you know, when Slayer's on, man, they just go nuts. And so that's another thing I'll get to, is the bands. They talk about the parking situation. I mean, this documentary is great because it gives you every little sort of perception that was going on from the audience members, the security, the roadies, the techs, you know, the bands, and it's great. So, like, in regards to the crowds, you know, these girls are like, we've been driving around for 6 hours. We got a spot right over there for us to camp in, and they won't let us in there. And she's like, I've been driving around for 6 hours now. And then she leans out and she's like, Ticketmaster sucks. And so, yeah, so Ticketmaster's been fucking people up, you know, for yeah, probably 30 years now themselves. So, you know, so, so that's great. So let's get to the bands. So they interview all the bands, and they have little adventures of their own during this film. Let's just go through the band list, okay? So, Static X, the Deftones, Slipknot, Godsmack, Fear Factory, System of a Down, Primus with Buckethead, Slayer, Rob Zombie, and Black Sabbath. So, as they go through, the pacing of this film, they'll go from the crowds to, Sharon Osbourne talking to, Ozzy or whatever, and then so, they'll show, play little bits of Sabbath, a song here, a little piece of a song here, as they're driving down the road and reflecting and stuff. And then they start talking to the bands, and, Static X, at some point during the tour, their bus gets repossessed. And, there's the guy, so they're taking all their shit off the bus. And, and they're like, the guy, it's not our bus. Somebody, offered it to us, and for some reason or another, it's, he owns the bus, and so it has nothing to do with the band, and they're just like caught in it, and the guy's like, we're broke, we're a new band, we don't really have much of a budget, and then they, they talk to the guy who's repossessing the bus, and he's just like, it's my job, so they finally caught up to him, and they had that happen. And they interview System of a Down, and and then here's the greatest, man. They're talking to Primus. Primus is sitting in a graveyard. It's Brain and Larry Lamond and Les Claypool, and they're doing this vamp, chugging along, and the guys, Les is introducing Buckethead, in this little musical introduction. And so, while he's doing that, you see Buckethead in this graveyard, and he's like jumping on top of tombs, swinging nunchucks, doing robot dances, and it also has Buckethead speaking. He's holding the old woman mask up, saying, when Buckethead was a boy, his mother liked to knit, and she made him play guitar, and blah blah blah, and then, bam! Here he comes out on stage. They cut to him when he's comes out with Primus, and it's just doing his thing, man, ripping a slide and doing his thing, man. It's great, man. And that's 50 minutes into the film. You see Buckethead come out with Primus, man. And, they talk to Slipknot. They talk to those guys. There's a funny bit where they're in Washington, D.C., at the monument and everything, and Lincoln Memorial and the pool, and there's a class school trip of a bunch of 8th graders. And so here's Slipknot walking around with their masks and uniforms, and the kids are talking to them, and, oh, we love Slipknot, blah, 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 and that's a kind of a funny bit, they was talking to, I think it was Godsmack, and they're like, Sabbath is celebrating 30 years. Do you think you guys will be celebrating 30 years on the road? And he's like, oh man, I don't know, and it's, it's hard to say, but everybody is having a good time. All the bands, from what they say, and from what you hear, everybody got along, and it was quite an atmosphere of families and cliques and groupies. Pretty wild stuff. They talk to Slayer. Slayer goes to Alcatraz Island, and they're in the prisons and walking around and being interviewed. And Jeff Hanneman comes across, as just a really cool guy, and he's funny. He's upbeat, and just generally seemed like a nice guy. And like when he passed away unexpectedly, I felt sad because after watching this movie, I was like, man, he was a cool dude. And so that, that's, and when they show Slayer performing, man, that's when the crowd starts tearing shit up, and you see shit getting thrown around. It's pretty cool, man. And so one thing I want to say too is, so this is 1999. This is a couple of years before that television show, The Osbournes, was on the air, and you could tell because they are living in that same Beverly Hills mansion where they filmed that show. But being in 1999, his two kids, Ozzy's two kids, Jack and Kelly, they're young, they're got to be like early teens or something like that. I don't know how old they were in the show, but they look younger than you would see them on that television show because it was a couple years later. And so when they interview Rob Zombie, Jack comes out and sits next to him because Rob Zombie's like, Jack's always in our trailer, and quite frankly, and it was cool too because Rob Zombie says something like, he's like, in some ways we got the best spot and we got the worst spot because he's like, I know that, by the time we're hitting the stage, it looks really cool. The sun is going down, and that's cool. He's like, but we know those kids, the audience has been sitting out there for 12 hours just waiting to see Sabbath, and I'm sure they can't wait for us to get off the stage, kind of a thing. And ironically, he put on quite a stage show with the lights and dancers and, risers and all kinds of shit. But I would say, like, I don't know, his part of the movie is like my least favorite, like as far as the music goes. I'm not, I'm familiar with Primus and Slayer and Sabbath and Rob Zombie's System of a Down, but I'm not, a hardcore fan or anything, or but Rob Zombie stuff, didn't really stick with me. I thought his singing was lousy and just horrible, man. I don't know. And then, here comes Black Sabbath, and it's kind of funny. Ozzy tells a story about when that first Sabbath album came out, and he put it on for his family. He went to, back home and put it on a phonograph, and the whole family sitting around, to hear this new record. And he's like, here the record starts with the rain and the thunder and the bells, and here comes the music, and my dad thought it was going to be like drinking songs. Here we are, And he's like, my dad said to me afterwards, he's like, son, are you sure you're doing more than alcohol? That was pretty cool. But, and so that's the thing. So there's a great segment about Ozzy. And they interview Tony Dennis, which is Ozzy's assistant. He's been his assistant for 17 years. And he said that when this was being filmed, Ozzy was 8 years sober. And they show him skipping rope, Ozzy skipping rope outside. And Tony goes through all the stuff he prepares for Ozzy. I mean, like there's these two machines, steam machines, that he inhales to clear up any congestion in his throat, and then he's taking inhalers, drinking tea. He's got like the masks that come down in an airplane, the mouthpiece and the bag. He's got that thing going on. They show his infamous buckets, and he's like, this is the bucket where, if he needs to take a quick pee or something else, which has been known to happen, he's like, I take care of it all. And they show those two guys. They had a nice relationship, you could tell. And so, there's this other part where they're in South Carolina, I think, somewhere in the South, and there's these Bible protests going on by these evangelicals. And this is great. I had to write this down. There's somebody holding up a sign that says this, and I quote, "Black Sabbath promotes thrill killing, rape, murder, cannibalism, homosexuality, death, and suicide." And they show the head preacher guy who is running this protest. He was doing a radio debate or whatever with Sharon Osbourne. So Sharon Osbourne sitting with the preacher on some radio station, and and he's like railing against Sabbath and their music, and the guy's complaining. He goes, "You see this beeper? It's going off right now. Ever since I started this campaign, people are texting my beeper with 666, 666. Keeps coming across here. My dogs have been stolen out of my yard, and my mailbox is knocked over in a ditch, and blah, 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 and all this stuff. People are sending me numbers to porn sites, and, and she's like, well, you're doing a lot of damage to me too, and our reputation, people like it, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, Sharon, these kids are Black Sabbath is leading them into sin and all this stuff. Do you know about golden showers? Do you know about, rimming? Do you know? And she's like, what are you, where are you picking up all this shit, man? And he's like, you got to read. And he says to her, he's like, Sharon, I hate to tell you, but Black Sabbath are practicing cannibals. So, I mean, this is what a great documentary is just filming shit as it happens, and not interjecting. I mean, there's, some great interviews where they're talking to the crowd and everything like that. And so, so they talk to the pyrotechnics guy, and he's showing the band Black Sabbath, this is what's going to happen, and this is where, it's going to go off, and, all that stuff. And they talk to the roadies, and they show you how many trucks and them taking everything apart and what it's like to be a roadie and how hard it is for all that stuff. A lot of the artists talk about their own bus troubles, let alone, Static X getting theirs repossessed, they're breaking down and all kinds of stuff, and getting lost, and, things like that. And so outside of the crowds, the Ozzfest had all these side attractions going on. It was a whole carnival atmosphere, all happening all around you. So, they had like a mechanical bull, and, they had freak shows. There's this guy, sticking a hook in his tongue and spinning around weighted objects, his nipples, putting a drill, through his nose, and having people come up and, hit a nail and screwdrivers up his nose and shit, and having a chain, go through his nose. He has some girl, and he goes, "Now walk that way," and while his chain gets pulled through his fucking cavity, And then Kelly Osbourne's like, "My mom took me to this freak show," and she's like, I'm like, "What's gonna happen?" She's like, "Just watch it." And she made me watch it and made fun of me at my, distress at seeing all this, and if, guys, gals, if you like tits, breasts, jugs, whoppers, you will see them all throughout this film, as there's all sorts of stuff going on, and there's also face painting for the kids, that are there. I mean, probably happening side by side. And then they talk to they interview some groupies, and it's a great film, the way it just moves, and everybody gets their little piece, and it's very poignant because like they asked Slayer, they're like, they were the only band that had a sort of a definite answer. They're like, "Do you think you'll still be touring in 30 years?" And they're like, "Well, we're actually over the halfway point. We're almost at 20." So they're like, "Yeah, we could do, we could fill 30 years." And I do believe they have. And so, at this time, when Ozzy's saying he can't tour anymore, I mean, Christ, this is, 23 years after this was filmed. And, they're asking him then, they're like, Ozzy's like in, rough shape, man. And even back then, he's like, some days I can do it and some days I can't, and he's like, "I just want to give the fans, everything I can." And Geezer Butler pretty much reaffirms that, and there's a lot of laughs, a lot of humor, a lot of music, a lot of bizarre shit, and but it gives you a great idea of just what it took to put on this traveling road show with some some great heavy metal bands. So if you like heavy metal music, this movie is for you. And I would hope that if you do know this movie, We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll, to go see it again. And if you haven't seen this movie, you never heard of it, go find it and watch it. I mean, you'll love it. It really is good. And hopefully, I mean, you tell me in the comments if this film has been officially released or not, on a Blu-ray or DVD or is on some kind of streaming service. Please, people deserve to know that information, because it's definitely worth a watch. And that movie, again, by Penelope Spherris, We Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll. And it's good. And, it's Ozzy, at 50 years old, rocking out with Sabbath again, and, showing you just how harsh, his life was at the time, and trying to be clean and healthy and put on a good show and everything like that. And here we are, we've come to the time when he can't do it anymore. And, God bless him, he certainly did a lot already, and he deserves the rest and enjoy himself. And so I hope you enjoyed yourself. If you like what I'm doing, please subscribe to the channel, click all notifications, so when you're in the YouTube app, see, now that's important, when you're in the YouTube app, you'll have notifications of all the channels you subscribe to, you know, and you go to your subscription page, and there it is, all the recent videos in a line, and pick what you want to see. And I hope you pick the Pleasure Den of the Absurd, because we got all kinds of stuff going on, all kinds of stuff coming up. If you really like what's going on, you can donate via PayPal. Information is in the description of the video and on my homepage. I encourage you to visit my channel and go to community. I have some polls that regarding Led Zeppelin, and I think there's one of Hendrix, and more will be coming. And you know, that's where I'll just post little texts. I'll do little polls, get you guys involved. Please tell me in the comments if you're aware of this movie, if you've never heard of it, or what your review is after you've seen it, you know. So I'd love to hear it, you know. Comment, like, share, subscribe, and always, please, always know that you're welcome. So you should never be afraid to step inside the Pleasure Den of the Absurd.